Good morning to all participants. Good morning, particularly to Sri Piyush Goyal, Honorable Union Minister for Railways and Commerce and Industry. I'm pleased to welcome you here today, this morning, on the webinar or roundtable dialogue together with Invest India on making Industry 4.0 work for researching for recovery and the self-reliant India. I would also like to welcome the other panelists, Ms. Sunita Daura, the Joint Secretary, DPIIT, Sri Sanjay Shada, Additional Secretary of Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Ms. Shruti Likti, Joint Secretary of the Department of Heavy Industry, and Mr. Deepak Butler, Chairman and MD of Invest India, and Anup Wabra, Director of the Foundation for Smart Manufacturing, and then my colleague Alexandro Lavapo, from the headquarters of UNIDO. Thank you to Invest India to partner with UNIDO for today's most timely roundtable on making Industry 4.0 work for self-reliant India. Since the onset of the COVID pandemic, we have all witnessed an unprecedented rollout of digital technologies and online products and services in retail, business, finance, government, education, and health services. Some of these digital technologies have also included changes in the way we put together things together and move around. In other words, in the physical world, where digital and physical technologies have merged, for example, for the rapid design and prototyping of medical equipment with 3D printing, we speak of smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0. Indeed, the boundaries between digital and physical are then increasingly blurred and integrated with advanced connectivity between people and with and between intelligent machines. To counter the view that Industry 4.0 was invented in and for advanced manufacturing countries, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization set out to present a developing country perspective, which is reflected in the flagship industrial development report entitled Industrializing in the Digital Age. That will be presented a bit later this morning. The publication predates the emergence of COVID-19, yet the key findings remain at least equally relevant for economic recovery. The report found that only a few countries and therein only a few firms are creating and adopting advanced digital production technologies or Industry 4.0 at scale. Globally, UNIDO found that 10 countries are leading the development and application of these technologies, including Germany, Japan, Republic of Korea, UK, and USA. India is the only lower middle income country that made it to the group of followers in production, a group with, amongst others, Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, Italy, Singapore, and Spain. These advanced digital production technologies appear to be co-created through blending of capabilities of digital technologies and production and manufacturing expertise. To utilize these technologies, developing countries must therefore nurture industrial capabilities and foster industry collaboration with knowledge-based institutions such as academia and technical institutes. Different generations of digital and physical technologies coexist in India and other developing countries, creating what we then could refer to as islands of technological islands, where few firms with advanced technologies are surrounded by a majority of firms operating at lower technological levels. Leading firms are hampered by this gap because they have trouble linking backwards and nurturing benefits from their supply chain. Moving forward, India may focus on two broad application areas outlined by UNIDO. Firstly, priority could be given to support current manufacturers that are using third or second generation machinery to augment their capabilities with customized and retrofitted digital technologies to improve quality, productivity, and reduce environmental footprint. We see some examples in the automotive sector, for example, where Mahindra and others are installing cobots to upgrade Industry 3 assembly lines. Secondly, we could focus on supporting the technology leaders, innovators, and startups to help them to deploy these advanced digital production technologies and new products for new markets and new services. An example in point is, for example, Saga Defense Engineering, a leader in floating drone technology that expanded its capability and created an unmanned waste shark for collecting plastic and other debris floating on surface waters. As the world around India transforms through the adoption of Industry 4.0, India requires active position and a strategy forward. With that in mind, I would like to invite Honorable Piers Goyal, a Union Minister for Railways and for Commerce and Industry, to share the government's perspective and his insights on today's theme of making Industry 4.0 work for self-reliant India. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Berkel, for your leadership to steer UNIDO to greater heights during this, particularly during this period of COVID and the continuous engagement that we have had with each other during this period. Thank you also very much all the distinguished diplomats present here, the distinguished panel members and industry representatives, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very delighted to be at this roundtable on making Industry 4.0 work for self-reliant India. Such free deliberations on strategies, challenges ahead are required to push India towards a $5 trillion economy, and within that, take India to a $1 trillion manufacturing economy. And I greatly welcome the Industrial Development Report 2020, which gives a good overview of industrializing in the digital age. I'm very happy to see that UNIDO is collaborating with partners and the Government of India to accelerate this development. And I'm sure going forward, we'll have a lot to learn from your own engagements with the rest of the world. And I'm sure we'll offer some insights into the developing world's perspective when the world prepares itself for the post-COVID world. In fact, in the good old days, the rise of industries used to be dictated by technological development, but the way technologies would develop would be also tailor-made to what industry required. Today, that process has significantly changed. Today, technology is deciding the fate of industries. Technologies are pushing Industry 4.0 with artificial intelligence, data analytics, IoT, autonomous vehicles coming into play, nanotechnology on the digital side, 5G, robotics, quantum computing. All of these new age developments are today determining how industry will evolve, changing human behavior, and in turn also defining the fabric of today's society. In fact, future power will lie in leveraging on technological developments for sustainable growth. And I'm very sure today's deliberations will help come up with new ideas, new ways in which these technologies can help us take India into the fast track of industrial development, quality production and manufacturing in India, and help us scale our global engagement to never before levels. I think as more and more technologies come in, machines become smart, industries start evolving, adopting these technologies, we will be in a position and a better position to engage with the rest of the world on free and fair terms, gain the competitive edge, given the huge advantages that India has to offer to the rest of the world. And I'm sure we are going forward going to play a very, very important role in the development of economies and industry around the world. In fact, these advanced digital production technologies will also foster inclusive and sustainable industrial development, and ultimately the achievements of these sustainable development goals. As we focus more and more on Startup India, Make in India, Design in India, Serve from India, Digital India, innovation is going to lead the way to our own evolution, to our own preparation to serve the needs and aspirations of 1.3 billion Indians. The government of India, under the very, very inspiring and able stewardship of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, has been actively engaged in significant structural reforms. Reforms that open up many new sectors, both to the private sector and international businesses. These reforms will make it easier to do business in India, will make it more fruitful and profitable to engage with Indian industry, Indian markets. It will also help transfer of technology to India, promote investments, and this kind of institutional interactions to evolve a better way to do things, I think is going to become more and more important. The COVID days has now introduced video conferencing in a very significant way in our day-to-day lives. And as I've said before, I personally find this to be very, very efficient, very, very outcome-oriented, focused to the subject, and going forward, I'm sure these engagements, even though not personal but through technology, will help us realize the dreams of 1 billion plus people, help us to meet the transformational vision that Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has laid out for India, prepare India to be a strong, unified and powerful country that I believe is the true place for India to be in. In fact, what we do today, how we engage with businesses today, is going to determine our country's future, the future of our generations ahead of us. Some of the biggest challenges are before us, but some of the boldest changes are also happening right now, which will redefine the paradigm of very existence that we have seen over the last several years. I'm happy that the people of India are in a mood to engage with this new and evolving world. The people of India stand solidly with Prime Minister Narendra Modi and are feeling empowered and are feeling enthused to take this country forward. As the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, had rightly said, what happens in the future depends on what we do in the present. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, all of us have an opportunity to contribute to the present, to prepare the nation for a brighter and more prosperous future. Some of the outcomes of the Industrial Development Report, some of which you, Dr. Burkell, enunciated just now, some of the good achievements of India that have been reflected in this report, some of the areas where we have to put in even more effort going forward, I'm sure will help us as we prepare different policies, be it our industrial development policy, be it our logistics policy, be it our skill development plans. We have recently unfurled a new education policy for the country with a deep focus on innovation, skilling, research, and how we can leverage these digital platforms to provide quality education to every student in the country, both in rural India and in urban India. Under the Prime Minister's mandate of a national broadband mission, probably for the first time in our history, the number of rural internet users has surpassed the urban internet users in India. This, I think, will be a game changer in terms of promoting technology, in terms of engaging the whole country with newer ideas, innovation, and it will bridge the digital divide, actually help eliminate disparity of resources, which for years has plagued this nation. In fact, Prime Minister Modi in the last 6 years has been very focused to improve the quality of life of the people of India. He believes in ease of living. And through the last 6 years, if you see each of his programs, they have been singularly focused on a better life for the poor, for the marginalized sections of society, for our young boys and girls who otherwise were deprived of equal opportunity. Be it the Swachh Bharat mission for a clean India, be it the Ayushman Bharat, which ensures 500 million relatively poor and lower middle class Indians getting free healthcare, be it the Saubhagya Yojana, which took free electricity connection to millions of homes in the length and breadth of the country, or be it the Ujjwala Yojana, which provided 80 million households with a free gas connection. One of the flagship achievements of this government has been making India open defecation free, and almost every home in the entire country today being provided with a toilet. 110 million plus toilets being built in a short span of time is no mean achievement. But for all these transformative initiatives, probably the country could not even have overcome this lockdown period and the difficulties of the severe lockdown that India implemented, praised worldwide, recognized by the World Health Organization as one of the most effective lockdowns, which gave India time to prepare self-sufficiency and prepare ourselves to really fight the COVID pandemic, prepare ourselves with adequate testing, prepare ourselves with adequate medical equipment, be it ventilators, be it simple things like gloves and masks, be it the highly technical personal protective equipment, be it our ability to ensure that we'll never have a problem in medical oxygen throughout the country. All of these steps and the awareness, the public participation, the public involvement, the public commitment that India has seen in the last 4 months is truly unparalleled in our own history, but also is a beacon of light for the rest of the world to see how a country, a large, densely populated country like India could face this unheard of pandemic of massive dimensions with such ability. In fact, our recovery rates are amongst the best. Our death rates are amongst the lowest in the world. And by and large, the people's confidence, the people's commitment to bring back livelihoods and economic activity is reflected in a number of indicators. Yesterday, I was informed that power consumption, electricity, is near normal, back to the last year's level, maybe 2 or 3% down. Our exports, you will be happy to know, have almost reached last year's July level, with nearly 90% of our export of July 19 having come back. In fact, if we were to remove the oil exports, the oil-related exports, where we are largely only a small value adder, importing crude oil, processing it and exporting it, we are 95% plus on the revival of our exports. The country today is in a mood to not only bring back economic activity, but also become self-reliant, also improve the quality of our products, the competitive pricing of our products, build in economies of scale, and compete with the rest of the world on equal terms, on fair terms, on terms which will make the Indian product not only an attractive proposition, but a preferred proposition for businesses around the world. Atmanirbhar Bharat flows from the dream of Mahatma Gandhi that we become independent, both economically, socially, and politically. He believed that India has to achieve economic independence and more try to ensure the maximum utilization of our resources to produce what we want. It is only a self-reliant man who can truly help others from a position of strength. I think India today is preparing itself to work with the rest of the world in this globalized world, work with other partners, with our trusted partners, from the spirit of friendship and cooperation and collaboration. Be a strong ally of our friends, because Atmanirbhar Bharat is not about closing India's doors. It is not about restricting India's engagement with the rest of the world. In fact, we believe our engagement with the rest of the world is only going to grow from strength to strength as more and more of our young boys and girls become skilled, become well equipped to serve humanity, serve the people with new skills, new technologies, with research, with innovation. Similarly, our industry, our manufacturers have demonstrated that no task is difficult for them to achieve. In fact, be it production of PPEs, test kits, ventilators, in every respect, in such a short span of time, we have been able to assimilate and integrate modern technologies to our needs very quickly, very fast, promoted domestic manufacturing, and showed the world that India has the capability for speed, skill, and scale, something that was always very dear to Prime Minister Modi. I think no individual nation's destiny can be complete without the collective cooperation and support of both multinational organizations, multinational companies, and engagement with the rest of the world. Organizations like UNIDO have played an important role in our own industrial development, and I would like to thank UNIDO for the very good work that they have done in India, that I'm sure they will continue to do in the days, months, and years to come. As Lord Buddha had said, and I quote, "You have to work out the path for your own salvation. You light your own candle." I believe India has entered into this new phase with hope, positivity, and an eye towards the future. We are prepared to engage. We are prepared to innovate. We are prepared to perform, reform, and transform the nation and the nation's destiny. I invite all of you on this program, on this roundtable today, and also all those who are not here today, to be a part of India's unfolding story. This is the best time ever to be in India. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for referring to the work of UNIDO. That's of course is very much appreciated, but also reflecting on the spirit of the Indian economy, the Indian manufacturing sector, to try to rebuild the economy and livelihoods, and in that regard also the resolve to get on the positive side of this crisis again. Many initiatives which you've highlighted, clearly the determination, the desire to achieve a $1 trillion manufacturing sector are much appreciated, and the role that Industry 4.0, the digital technologies will play is very important. So thank you very much for your contribution, and I understand you may have to leave, so please feel free if you need to excuse yourself. Otherwise, I guess we'll continue with the program. I think we have a thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much, and we will provide you a briefing of the findings of the discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Barkel. It's been a pleasure knowing you, meeting you, and today seeing you on television. It's much rather we'll meet one of these days to develop this report. But I would really look forward to the outcomes of this roundtable, because I'm sure some very good ideas will come out and will help us in our work going forward. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Yes. Namaskar. Thank you very much. Okay, then let us proceed. Can I hand over to Maitra? Would you take over for a second?
Yes. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Rene. And we'd like to thank the Minister again for sparing time and for his address. And now we'd like to invite, I would just like to check whether we have Alexandro with us already, or I would request Dr. Burkel to please give his address now.
Thank you very much. Let me try to share my screen. Yes, that seems to work. So thank you very much, and once again, welcome on behalf of UNIDO and Invest India to this roundtable discussion on making Industry 4.0 work for self-reliant India. I will present a little bit on the context in the kind of recovery context that we are currently operating in, and then Alejandro will follow on with the details of the industrial development report. With that, maybe I should start with the work that we did already early in 3 months ago in April to try to figure out what is really the pain points for the MSMEs. And I think in the lockdown and in the recovery time, there are basically 5 areas that MSMEs and manufacturing firms are continuously referring to. There is, first of all, the kind of unprecedented uncertainty. So we are recovering, but we're also uncertain on whether there might be a second wave or what is happening in international markets. So there is a kind of very much uncertainty, which is not so good for business planning and progressing. And the second point is related to the markets in terms of the demand for products and services that decline, but then also now slowly recovery. Some segments are showing recovery, and indeed the reference to the 90% export recovery is a very positive indication. Then we saw also the issues on the manpower changeover, so the reverse migration that happened, and some of it has returned, but still we get reports that clusters are not fully able to operate because of shortage of sufficiently skilled workforce. Then we've had issues which are more related to the assets which were standing idle, the equipment and the stocks, and these have decayed in the 2-3 months that they've been standing idle, and there's a little bit of stranded assets and also some equipment that has eroded or degraded that has caused issues to restart, and also some unfortunate accidents. And then the fifth item, which basically started before the lockdown, was the disruption of supply chains. delays, so that the essential parts did not arrive on time, and already before the lockdown caused some factories to stop, to have to shut. So I think that it's clear that, and this has been also addressed to a great extent, that MSMEs need liquidity, they need working capital to restart, but ultimately the focus needs to be on creating demand, because ultimately demand is then the economic motor of the manufacturing sector. But at the same time, it was also pointed out that the crisis has sort of exacerbated the earlier weaknesses of the MSME segment, and that there was a need to rebuild operations, manpower, supply chains. And with that in mind, UNIDO and partners developed then this Building Back Business from Crisis knowledge platform, which serves as a framework for action and looking at using the crisis as an opportunity to improve business, and ultimately also transfer to the mandate of inclusive and sustainable industrial development. So industrialized industries that we basically want for the future. So the system is set up as a set of tutorials with a knowledge base of fact sheets and checklists, delivery webinars, which we've done, and we're working to provide this also to MSMEs. It was launched on the 30th of April, and it's a partnership for development with the India Small and Medium Entrepreneurs Forum, the UN India Business Forum, and Empatech. So the resource was initially in English, but now it's also in Hindi and Bengali available. I mentioned that we are structured into a back to business roadmap, which is essentially giving 5 steps to work along, and there it's not that one needs to be completed before 2. There's more consecutive work on there. So part of the planning to focus on these business activities which make most sense, to look for new opportunities, then ready the workplaces, addressing the workspaces so that we prevent the spread of the infection, but also address new working arrangements that may pose concerns in terms of safety and operational efficiency. Then restart to recover is really looking at the initial stages where supply chains were disrupted, operations not fully aligned. So we had basically a jigsaw, but the pieces did not exactly fit anymore, and there was a lot of problem solving that is still happening. So we are gradually moving to 4 and 5, where we talk about revival for growth, where the emphasis has been on looking at core competencies and how can these be repurposed to make products and services that are more sought after right now. And then number 5 is looking at business continuity. Also from the international perspective, can we bring in the standards for business continuity and certainties to avoid the disruptions like we had. As I mentioned, we have embedded this in kind of areas where we could use the crisis as an opportunity to improve, basically in the 7 areas of business excellence. So entrepreneurship, finance, customers, supply chain operations, manpower, health and safety. So these are areas where we believe that as part of the recovery, we could actually improve the MSMEs and the manufacturing sector. So just to give us a few screenshots, so it's set up as tutorials, which are visible here on b3cmsme.org, where you have a lecture type of a presentation plus infographics. And then we have guidance notes, which is kind of a short primer, 5-6 pages for each module to explain what is needed, and then some checklists. So this is the kind of the immediate restart and recovery operations. But then I think that we're also looking at transforming the manufacturing sector, and the minister was also referring to that there will be a new normal where there is a transformation of global production and consumption systems that we see happening. And even though it's difficult to look exactly into the glass ball of what might happen, we see that the future is likely to be more circular, so that there's attention for the environmental issues. So can we cut costs by saving energy, by using less weight, producing less waste, and other issues, so that gets us back into business quicker? Can we look at the resilience so that we're better prepared for any shocks in supply chains? And then digitize, which is basically the topic of Industry 4.0. So where we've indeed seen that in the COVID era, we have seen digital transformation at unprecedented speed. And there's some examples here, which you see that we have seen accelerated uptake of Industry 4.0, like drones being used for infection of places, to be monitoring and screening of patients, to do 3D printing of parts for ventilators, to look blockchain for data analytics for patients' care, and to use also Internet of Things to better control supply chain. So we've seen that in the last 4 or 5 months, there's probably been more digital transformation than in the past 3 or 4 years. And we expect from UNIDA that this will continue, that in the Building Back Better, there will be more emphasis on this innovation, investments in technologies, and moving forward on that, particularly on the kind of innovation and digitization, which is the subject area of Industry 4.0. Of course, Industry 4.0, the new industrial revolution, is essentially a continuation of the earlier ways that we said mechanization, steam and water power was first. The second was electrification with mass production and conveyors, automation in the 80s, 90s with computers and CAD/CAM systems, and now the digitalization, which basically brings digital and physical technologies together. So somehow this is a very convenient way of looking at Industry 4.0, but what Alejandro will also elaborate is probably not the most in-depth understanding of it. But let me focus first on what is being seen as the producer benefits, so that we see that smart factories can drive new innovations, and digitalization allows for new business models and products and processes. There is improvement for the resource usage, and the early detection and corrective actions in manufacturing plants can improve resource efficiency by what is a rough figure of 30%. And then we see also that the productivity can be improved, so products can come much quicker to the market, machines can be repaired quicker, and procurement processes can be more customized. So there are very much benefits, but the question, of course, is, are these relevant and attainable for countries like India? Then there are consumer benefits, and this basically is related to the customization. So with Industry 4.0, we can basically make a tailor-made pair of shoes that fit your feet instead of at the price of otherwise a mass-produced, so ready-made shoes. And this is, of course, giving many opportunities for diversification and value addition that are there. But of course, this is also then the question: is this relevant and attainable for India? I think I would like to dive one level deeper on trying to understand this Industry 4.0. So we have the easy trajectory to say mechanization, electrification, automation, and then digitalization. But basically, there are two dimensions to it. One is the level of digital technologies that are involved. And then there are digital technologies even at the level of mechanization, which is more rigid production than lean production, integrated production. And then now we talk about the smart production, where we have these technologies of big data analytics, advanced robotics, cloud computing, and 3D printing and related ones. So we talk about the advanced digital technologies. And then we have on the other axis basically the physical technologies, so the production technologies, which was steam, water, electric energy, and electronics. And then we need to say basically that now we are talking about frontier technologies, which are in part developed by digital technologies, or with the help of digital technologies, and which open new opportunities. So nanotechnology, new materials, and biotechnology, and they are interrelated. But we can talk now the custom design catalyst for chemical processes, which can enable much more and much higher efficiency in chemical processes and produce less waste. So this is kind of a two-dimensional change for Industry 4.0 with digital technologies and physical technology change. So if we look at the action areas for Industry 4.0, it seems to be convenient to think kind of a gradual progression as a straight line. But we all know that everywhere nothing progresses along a straight line. So there are deviations from that. And I think there's two areas where India and other developing countries can take action. And one is on the kind of moving from the lower levels of production technology, so the 2IR, 3IR factories, which can be digitally retrofitted with enhancements of the digital production technologies. So you see here an example which was also highlighted in the industrial development report. This is Mahindra & Mahindra changing a tedious process which also involves hazardous materials with a cobot which can easily be retrofitted in existing manufacturing and assembly lines. So there are many opportunities, and also not only Mahindra but other automotive companies are working on this type of innovations. Then the other one is to try to go from digital technology and apply that with the higher advanced manufacturing technologies. And that is more the area of digital innovation. So exploit the frontier technologies and co-create advanced digital production technology for new products and markets. So I mentioned in the earlier one also this device, Saga Defense Engineering, which is a leader in floating drones for military applications, but they combined with a naval engineering to create a vessel that basically collects debris from floating on waterways, and in that sense is a clean tech innovation. So these two dimensions of digital retrofit on dealing with what some would refer as legacy equipment, and on the other hand the digital innovation. If we then look at making Industry 4.0 work for India, we see that there is probably a joint action possible on three areas. First of all, on the readiness level. So we perceive still that many industries are not yet willing to consider what Industry 4.0, because they're not aware, they are not understanding what it involves, and we need to probably also work on kind of appraisal tools. So where's your company? What is the aspirational journey that would be there? Then there is items around the capability of manufacturing firms. So that is related to kind of the innovation capability at enterprise level with manufacturing systems, the people skills, and also making investments available to that. Then a roadmap could focus on kind of standardized solutions around automation of legacy equipment, and this is not a negative connotation, but just the recognition that we cannot replace all the industrial capital goods, that we need to find ways to revalue and improve them. There could be many solutions on the inventory, logistic, and supply chain, and we could use virtually assisted reality for supporting training, but also maintenance and early inspection of predictive maintenance, basically. So that could give a lot of benefits there. So with that, I would like to conclude and hand over. So Industry 4.0, look at it from the perspective of both a digital technology transformation as well as the transformation in physical technologies, and the combination thereof gives us new opportunities. So thank you very much. Over to you, Maitre.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rene, for explaining the B3C initiative concerning the present situation, sharing an insight on how UNIDO tries to understand and help in the new normal, together with throwing light on the topic of discussion today. Now we'll move on to the next session, which is a panel discussion on the topic of accelerating Industry 4.0 for self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. The key questions around which the forthcoming discussion is going to be held are: what can Industry 4.0 contribute to vision of self-reliant India? What practical steps can Indian industries consider to start adapting Industry 4.0? What measures are needed to complete the ecosystem for the Industry 4.0? So I would like to again quickly introduce and welcome the panelists for the session. We have Mr. Sanjay Chadda, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industries. Ms. Sumita Davra, Joint Secretary, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. Ms. Sukriti Likhi, Joint Secretary, Department of Heavy Industries. Mr. Deepak Bagla, Chairman and Managing Director, Invest India. Dr. Anup Wadhwa, Director, IITD, AIA, Foundation for Smart Manufacturing. Welcome, guests. And the discussion will be moderated by Dr. Rene van Berkel again, and I would request him to take over the session now.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think we have still a little bit of problem with getting Alejandro online from Vienna. So he was supposed to give a kind of a quick summary of the main findings. So unfortunately, that has not materialized. Something is wrong. So we tried to get him online, but in the interim, I think we can get started with the panel discussion. So accelerating Industry 4.0 for self-reliant India. So how can Industry 4.0 contribute to self-reliant? What are practical steps, and what can we do to improve then the support ecosystem? So without further ado, I would probably like to ask first Mr. Sanjay Shada, the Additional Secretary from the Ministry of Commerce and Trade, Commerce and Industry, sorry, to make a contribution. So Mr. Shada, the floor is yours. I think we have it seems we have an issue there as well. So Sanjay Shada, I can see him entering now. Mr. Shada, would you like to come in straight away for the comments? I just introduced you as the additional secretary. So would you like to comment on the questions of how we can make Industry 4.0 work towards this self-reliant India? Floor is yours.
Sorry, I had not joined as a panelist, but I had joined as a guest. So I guess I did not have the speaking rights and the video rights. But now that suddenly they've appeared on the screen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly fine. Yes, and we can also see you.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been very interesting seeing the presentation and your comments and the minister's opening remarks. And the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat is something that's that also has relevance in the present times, because as you know that the COVID pandemic has now stirred up the sentiment of onshoring or shoring up some critical manufacturing. So this is a time when a lot of shoring up or onshoring can happen because of a large market that we offer. And India is very well positioned to take advantage of this, because in many countries, the IT revolution has been driven on the strength of the Indian IT personnel. And if you actually see the Indian IT personnel's contribution, somehow they have always been behind the scene workers for the American IT industry. They have made huge contributions for other sectors in IT manufacturing. Bangalore is a source for many countries, including countries like Huawei, companies like Huawei, companies like IBM. You name a company and it has a presence in Bangalore. The thing is that we need to now harness this technology in a manner which works for the advantage of India. And I have been listening to some of these suggestions, and I think it's a very timely seminar that UNIPCO has been organized. Of course, from commerce perspective, we are looking at it with the export potential and making the company integrated into the global value chains. The facilitation part, of course, will be more done by the Department for Promotion of Internal Trade, whose mandate it is to build up this industry and build domestic strengths. And we, from commerce, definitely hope that this would put India on the global map and would integrate us well into the global value chains, something that presently we lack. Because even with our trading partners, we have a very small percentage of global trade. We need to find our position relative to our critical position. So I hope that this would be a driver and something that will lead to it becoming a big exporting country. Thank you.
Indeed, with the whole transition and this sort of commercial transformations that are happening in the global production and consumption systems, value chains are changing, and it will become much easier to reshore with Industry 4.0 technology. So there are important trade and commerce implications, and indeed also opportunities if we connect manufacturing and innovation systems into integrated hubs in India. Because you already referred to the Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, I might want to go then straight to Ms. Sumita Dawa, the Joint Secretary of the DPIIT, to make some comments.
Thank you, Rene. Thank you very much. A very good morning to all the panelists, participants, colleagues. We have been talking about Industry 4.0, and we've been having several conversations facilitated by UNIDO with the various industry associations and the various ministries. In that context, thank you very much for this very timely roundtable on making India 4.0 work for self-reliant India. As has been mentioned in this roundtable already, since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen the rollout of technologies, and unprecedented rollout. And to take this forward, we would very much like to take ahead all the initiatives in the country around the digital technologies and the digital production systems. We hear about artificial intelligence, robotics, nanotechnologies, 5G telephony, and so on. We do observe, and we've observed in our past interaction, that a few firms have started utilizing these technologies, and they have started achieving tangible benefits. But we also observe that we need to create much more awareness, and we need to create much more motivation for majority of the firms which have yet to engage with these technologies. And that's where we do require a much more active strategy going forward. And that's where we've been working closely with UNIDO and with the other ministries. I'm very happy to see my colleagues from heavy industry and METI participate today. Like you said, cars and supporting startups, car manufacturers and supporting startups could be a good way to take the strategy forward. DPIIT is very keen to facilitate greater engagement on a greater scale, very keen to learn and to create more awareness about industrializing in the digital age. And in that context, the report today, which gives a very comprehensive assessment on the opportunities and challenges for industrialization in the current digital age, is a very, very welcome step. And do hope that all of us will be making use of this report. Also very happy to note that India is seen as the furthest ahead among the group of lower middle income countries in terms of the engagement with advanced digital production technologies. And we are placed in the same group as countries like Singapore, Australia, Canada, Italy, and Spain, which is a good benchmark. But nevertheless, given our stated goal for Atmanirbhar Bharat, our ambition cannot be anything less than breaking into the leaders group. And that's where we are very ambitious. We would like to learn more, create more awareness, take with us all the industry associations and the industry bodies, and be able to work much more actively and embrace the benefits of Industry 4.0. As has been already pointed out by the Honorable Minister, the ADP, the Advanced Digital Production Technologies, will enhance and contribute a lot to the 3 pillars of inclusive and sustainable development in terms of productivity and competitiveness, decent work and shared prosperity, and enhanced environmental sustainability. I stop here with my remarks and look forward to developing a roadmap in very concrete terms with concrete timelines with the help of UNIDO, with the help of all our industry associations in West India. My colleague Deepak Butler is here. So thank you very much, Deepak, for this very timely initiative you have taken with UNIDO. Very happy to be part of this discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you very much for highlighting this. Also, that even though India is probably the furthest ahead among the group of similar countries in the lower middle income bracket, there is still the ambition to move forward, and that's all. I think in reality also all potential is there because of the strengths of the Indian sector in the ICT knowledge-intensive services, but also having a solid manufacturing base. So that's very much appreciated. So let me go to Department of Heavy Industries, Ms. Sukriti Likhi, the Joint Secretary from the Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises, representing the Department of Heavy Industry.
Thank you very much, Rene, and very good morning to all the distinguished panelists and all of the people from industry who are listening in. Thank you for inviting me here. This gives me an opportunity to share with you all what the Department of Heavy Industry is already doing. As most of you would already be aware, we set up Samarth Centers. Samarth Centers is an acronym for Smart Manufacturing about 3 years ago. We have 4 Samarth Centers which were set up with government funding at IIT Delhi, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, at CMTI Bangalore, and in Pune, there is a Center for Advanced Manufacturing set up by Kirloskar. So the Department of Heavy Industry, in association with these 4 renowned entities, has gone ahead and created demonstration and experience centers for Industry 4.0. I would request all of you to come visit them. We'd be really happy and thrilled to see the work going on there. And these centers have been working with FICCI and EEPC and CII to reach out the advantages and the benefits of smart manufacturing to industry, especially the industrial clusters, the SME industrial clusters over the last 1.5 years. So we have reached out to most clusters. We've had these seminars and discussion meetings. We have a website. Would request you all to visit it. We have also demonstrated legacy machines, how to make them smart to get advantage. Like the UNIDO team and Renee explained to all of you, the advantages of smart manufacturing are many, and to convince small and medium-term industries to invest and to make them realize that the return on investment will be useful to them is the key point at the present moment. And like you pointed out, the auto sector is already, and there's several other sectors in the country which already have smart factories. We would be happy to show you those. But this is work in progress. There's a great deal to be done. We did set up a committee which has given us a report on the setting up of an industrial platform. Anup is here with you today. He was part of that committee. That is a very useful report on how all government agencies and all the stakeholders in the economy will work together to get a unified action for smart manufacturing in India. We are trying to work on test beds also, so that the largest companies in the world can work with our PhD students to take this forward. So the Department of Heavy Industry is making concerted efforts to take this forward for Atmanirbhar Bharat. We are happy that DIPP, Invest India, and UNIDO have got together to take this further. Thank you for that. And I would like to also share with you that for the skill requirement for Industry 4.0, we are working with the National Skill Development Council and our skill councils to create the qualification packs, they're called, the qualification packs that will define the syllabus or the curriculum required for a skilling of people that will take forward smart manufacturing. Also, we are in the process of creating standards with BIS for the same. So a lot of work is on, and we'll be happy for you to use the work we've done and to take it forward. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Sorry, I was. Thank you, Secretary, very much appreciated, and certainly the work that the four centers are doing is very much appreciated, and taking the lead to kind of demonstrate and take a little bit of the mystique around Industry 4.0 away, so that people can touch and feel what it looks like. So that is very much appreciated. Also for touching upon the issues of the skill development that are necessary. So thank you very much. I think then we move on to Deepak Butler, the Chairman and Managing Director of Invest India. So Deepak, would you like to come in and make some comments on this?
Thank you, Rene, and thank you for partnering with us on this very important initiative. And it's very interesting. We are at a transition from morning to afternoon. So let me say good afternoon to all the panelists. But what's more interesting is that it's not just symbolic that I speak about this transition from morning to afternoon. I think we are at a very interesting inflection point where India is concerned. And when you bunch us with a group of countries where you see our Industry 4.0 taking off, I think, and let me just step back onto that one. And I think you would fast see a very rapid change and shift where India is concerned, and you might just be seeing it amongst one of the leaders of the pack. And not just this pack, but as a global pack. And let me tell you why I say that. Industry 4.0, I think the essential thing is a mindset, really. It's that mindset to adopt. It's that mindset to adapt, both. And I think India is very well established itself globally on its ability on both the points. The primary reason being that, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that is where we stand. And we've been speaking about India's leadership in frugal innovation. And I think that is where it comes forward. And what am I leading to? I think we spoke about the MSMEs of India. We spoke about the big boys of India. I see a leapfrogging of India from an industry 2.0 or 2.50 to a 4.0. And the reason why I say that is because this mindset to adapt and adopt, and which is focused totally on both on optimization of resources and maximization of resources. That core mindset of maximization and optimization is what is taking us to this adaptation on a very fast basis. And the interesting point there is that this adaptation is not happening from top down. We spoke about the big boys. You spoke about the Mahindra. Very interestingly, you look at it, we are the largest two-wheeler makers in the world. Let me talk of two of them, the Royal Enfield Bullet motorcycle and let's say the Bajaj Auto people. They're both using cobots. And it's very interesting. Productivity has gone up, costs have gone down. But a very interesting aspect of that is that so has diversity been impacted positively. For example, a large number of jobs in the Bajaj factory, which were traditionally for the males, have now been moved into a gender diversity because the robots are helping the women. And now they have a gender diversity which is equally balanced. So that's a very interesting offshoot of it. And that is what we are seeing going ahead. But more importantly, you're talking of a system which is completely focused on optimization, on maximization. And one of the things which my MSMEs are best known for is their frugal innovation, their nimbleness, and most importantly, best utilization of capital. We saw that what has happened in COVID. And you know what? I'm giving you examples which are coming bottom up. So it's not just top down. It's a bottom up movement which is happening. For example, I have Tata Steel, which for one of its mines in Jharkhand is using drones to see on the volumes and to see that there is full compliance and monitoring on capacity utilization. Very interestingly, again, in a district called Singhum in Jharkhand again, they are using robots currently during the COVID in a hospital to give medicines and food. And these are the kind of examples which are coming up. And I'll give you another example. 2 weeks ago, I was on one of these VCs on one of our national channels. I had a young 18-year-old boy from a small township called Sitahari in Bihar. You know what he's done? He set up a small school for entrepreneurship, for startups, and they're using data analytics there for all the young startups coming in and around that area. to try and help them come up with accessing markets and try and creating business solutions for them. This is a small 18-year-old guy, a young boy, and he's got 18 others and 21 others of the same kind doing that and using those data analytics. So it's not just a top-down effort which is happening in India. It's a bottom-up. And one of the things there is the picking up of my entire, and I know maybe I'm taking a little more time on that one, Renee, but why I am stressing on the bottom-up bit? Because as we walk out, today we are in day 124 of the most unprecedented lockdown in human history, you know that. And one of the finest examples of nimbleness of business and using data analytics and modern technology to get it going is how on 30th of March, I had 0 PPEs in India. On the 15th of July, I have a run rate of over 800,000 PPEs and at a quality which is ready to be exported globally. This all happened with my MSMEs and their ability to pivot and their ability to adapt and adopt new business lines using the best of technology to make these things happen, obviously partnering with some of my big boys. So what I'm trying to come to is that the movement is now at that inflection point where India is concerned. We are at that bottom end of that hockey stick. We've just rounded that corner. We are up on a vertical stack. And what is going to lead this and be the catalyst for this is my entire digitization framework, which has been created by this government in the past 60 months. Just to give you one statistic before I end, 48 months ago, and you know data usage is now rated as the oil of the new world, which is going to be taking it forward. 48 months ago, my ranking on per capita data usage, mobile data usage, and Renee, I'm saying per capita, so I'm being fair. I'm not going to just multiply it by 1.3 billion and beat everybody to it. I'm saying per capita data usage, my ranking in the world was 122. Late last year, my ranking in the world is number 1. In fact, this year, I've consumed more per capita mobile data than China and the US put together. That shows you the pace at which we are changing. That shows you the pace at which we are adopting. And this is the place where you will see India leapfrogging into Industry 4.2 and being a leader, taking it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak, for highlighting some of the interesting examples, what you said on the cobots, and then increasing also job opportunities for women and girls in your, and making more diversity in the workforce, which is also helping in productivity, as we know in other from other work. So that's very positive, and also then highlighting the resilience and the ability of the MSME sector to pivot and come up with the PPEs and come up with many other areas with new solutions. So that is very good, and I think the ambition indeed should be that wherever we are, whether it's 2.1 or 2.3, we should try to get to a kind of 4 or 4.1 as soon as possible with this digital enhancements of the existing technologies and bringing in specific new opportunities. So thank you very much. I would then like to go to Anup Butler, who's director of the Foundation for for Smart Manufacturing, and it's one of the 4 centers that Sukrita was referring to. So Anup, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rene. Always a pleasure to be on a UNIDO discussion. The reason I said that is because UNIDO is not thinking of the next 6 months or the next 1 year. You're thinking of decade and generation ahead. And that's the advantage when we look at a longer horizon. I completely, align myself with the thoughts of Mr. Bagla when he said that the energy of India is contained in the MSME. And if we can unleash that and do a bottoms-up transformation, then that's real value added for India. In our setup, which Ms. Leakey spoke about, we have clearly recognized that we need to leapfrog in terms of capability, and that's the very conscious we are not really satisfied at just calling it smart manufacturing. The people behind the process, and manufacturing, as everybody knows, doesn't start and end with the shop floor. It starts with the product idea in mind. And one of the most critical disciplines there, which rarely gets spoken about, is the design of the production line. Now, that is where India is vastly different from the rest of the world. Sure, we have the automotive plants, which are modeled on, the Western scale of economy, but that has been a decision to shift or to the assembly of cars in different geographies. But when we look at the component makers, the tier 1, the tier 2, the tier 3, these people do not have sufficient volume to justify a full-scale imported line. And that is the reason why we have to look at India with a new prism. Surely many companies can leapfrog from 1.5 to 4. But in terms of the ability to design affordable, flexible production lines is one of the biggest challenges we need to worry about. Now, this can be done in two ways. We can look at it from building strength on our classical models, improving the ability of people to adopt digital tools. But there are 2-3 other aspects where I wanted to take time and speak about. Definitely, Industry 4, why it has engaged the world's attention is because this is likely to be a big disruptor. But let's understand what this disruption could mean for India and whether this disruption should be seen as a threat or being seen as an opportunity. Now, clearly, the smart interplay of technologies, and I'm deliberately using the word interplay because one of the primary reasons for the government to set up the summer centers was to bring all the technologies under one roof and get people to see the interplay. Now, it is in that interplay of robotics or artificial intelligence or augmented reality or digital twin or smart sensor that you can actually create the new and transformed way to design a production equipment. That is the way in which you are going to maintain a new production line. That is the way in which you are going to guarantee first time right pass through. Now, when you have all these virtues, what we can benefit from are clearly the disruptors that you can now achieve a decentralized model of wealth. You can have production centers, or I would say processing centers, where the raw material is and where the consumers are. So a big waste which you are eliminating, which is non-value added, is the cost of logistics. The minister spoke about 4 policies: technical development, skill development, education, and logistics. So if we look at these aspects, Industry 4.0 has an opportunity to impact all those areas. Now, definitely when we look at some other issues of what the country needs, and I'm happy we spoke about Cobot giving an opportunity to women in the workplace. Let us step back and say, where is India actually residing? 2/3 of India is residing in the rural areas. And the rural livelihood is also, I would say, like the MSMEs, a very large energy resource. If we can transform their lives through a production model based in their own backyard, then we are moving to society 5.0. And I think when we talk about Industry 4.0 for a developing nation like India, we should place it at the service of Society 5.0. And in Society 5.0, resilience is definitely a factor which will be taken into account. Sustainability and environment harmony, which is one of the pillars of the SDG, is also going to be taken care of. And the human challenge is the next thing I'd like to focus about, because Industry 4.0 requires a mindset of problem solving and value creation. It is a mindset which we probably in IITs and a lot of other smart colleges, we take it for granted. But we've forgotten that there is also a latent potential of innovation in that 2/3 of the population, which is in the rural area. We were approached recently by a woman entrepreneur, and she has designed a system not only to empower the women of the village, but to create economic prosperity through a system of production and processing of vegetables with solar dryers. It's a model which is completely holistic. It takes care of environment, it takes care of livelihood, and it takes care of a very Indian way of nourishing people with our own homegrown produce. The challenge this entrepreneur is facing is to work with people like us and help them upgrade in terms of scalability. Now, this is where we would like to actually request the government to think of model smart villages. I know we've spoken about smart cities and a lot of attention is there, but if we can have an integrated policy that such equipment should be used, made in India, for India, it gives everybody the confidence to put our weight behind it. Now, appropriate automation is to be used there, appropriate robotics is to be used there, appropriate IoT is to be used here. All the virtues of Industry 4.0 need to be offered to such solutions. Now, these are also startups, but these are startups of a new kind. And I think as Samarth Udyog, we do want to be able to support them, but we would like to take this dialogue on a larger platform, because the race of Industry 4.0 is not a sprint race, it's a marathon. We've had very successful examples of, the green revolution and also, the defense Atmanirbharta. So we've had a very, very robust experience of connecting with all of India. Similarly, Industry 4.0 needs to be connected with all of India so that we can again leverage the power of the individuals and create sustainable value for their life, for their prosperity, and support them through the government's schemes. We've also had schemes like the ZE, like the Z scheme of MSME, which was started when Prime Minister Modi came first in 2014. We also look and see how we can integrate that, because this is a collective transformation. A few industries can perform, a few centers can perform, but the reform policy has to come from government so that the transformation is a collective transformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Anouk, for your thought-provoking comments as well. And I think that, as usual, I would almost say so. We've been in different panels together. I think what is very interesting is that you highlight the point of that India has not so well developed its design of production process of production lines. So apart from maybe the big assembly of large numbers in lines, there is a degree of unorganization in the manufacturing processes, which becomes a barrier towards applying of the advanced digital production technologies. And I think also you highlight the issues of the new opportunities, so design bringing in, so it's not only industry as what happens on the shop floor, the physical transformation of materials, but there's also the design, the quality control, all the associated processes that can be benefiting from digital technologies. So thank you very much. I mean, the digital transformation is also bound with some challenges. So if the connectivity is not there, then we are a bit stuck. But so that was the reason also that we had to go to the panel comments before the presentation of the report. But I think now it's sorted. I can see my colleague Alejandro, and I would like to ask him to maybe give a presentation on the main findings of the industrial development report from the UNIDO perspective. And maybe we can then come back for a few short comments from the panelists. So Alejandro, the floor is yours, and welcome to this webinar.
Thank you very much, Rene, and good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to participate in this event, and I'm happy that we managed to solve this technical problem. So I will now share my screen. Good, excellent. So in what follows, I will try to provide you a short summary of the main findings and messages of the Industrial Development Report 2020. Rene has already introduced some of these key findings, but I will try to elaborate a bit further in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And let me start giving you a bit of a context regarding the Industrial Development Report 2020. First of all, what was the main objective of this report? And the main objective is to analyze the challenges and opportunities that advanced digital production technologies open for developing countries in their path towards industrial development. And in order to do so, what we have done is to combine UNIDO's own research with inputs from leading experts from the field. And you will see then in the website of the IDR 2020 that there are like 15 background papers produced by leading experts on the field, and I encourage you to go through these papers. But we have also done in-depth country analysis, including a collection of firm-level data in a subset of 5 developing countries, and 16 case studies that we have reported separately. And what I would like to stress is that from these 16 case studies, 2 are actually from India. And I think Rene already mentioned these case studies. One was a firm-level case study on the company Mahindra Ltd. And the other one was a policy case study on the establishments of centers for Industry 4.0 in 3 locations, New Delhi, Bangalore, and Pune. So in what follows, I will try to structure my presentation along these 6 main questions. The first one is, what are these advanced digital production technologies? Then, why advanced digital production technologies are important? Next, who is creating and who is using this type of technologies? And what is needed to engage with this technology? And then I will zoom in the case of India. And the question we're going to address is, how is India performing in this particular field, which I think was already quite informed in the debate, but we can provide another angle for this. And finally, how can India capitalize on the opportunities opened by these technologies, something that has already been discussed during the panel. So let me start with the first question. What are these ADP technologies? Rene has already introduced them. So these are commonly known also as Industry 4.0 technologies, and are the sort of main driving force behind the 4th Industrial Revolution. And there are different technologies included in this group. Perhaps the 6 most known are the Internet of Things, big data analytics, advanced robotics, artificial intelligence and machine learning, cloud computing, and 3D printing. So we have already been discussing these technologies. Now, an important point that we make in the report is that these technologies are not actually the result of a sort of revolutionary disruption, but they are rather the result of an evolutionary transition. And why so? Well, because they have emerged from the same engineer and operational practices and learnings from the previous industrial revolution. And this is a key point because it means that in order to enter into this fourth industrial revolution, countries need to have some capabilities in the previous technologies of the previous industrial revolution. And I will come back to this in a second. And a second important point I would like to stress is that in order to be fully operational, these technologies should combine three components. And this is something that Rene already mentioned. We have the hardware component, which are the robots, the 3D printers, equipment. We also have the connectivity component, which are the sensors and the Internet of Things connecting the machinery. And we also have the software component, which is this big data analytics, the machine learning that will allow the interconnection of the process and the administration of the process. And when all these three components come together, they give rise to the idea of cyber-physical system or the smart factory. Okay, and this is the key element that we are analyzing in the report. Now, why these technologies are important? Well, in the report, we argue that these technologies can bring dividends for countries seeking to achieve inclusive and sustainable industrial development. And in particular, what we identified that these technologies have the potential to, first of all, foster industrial competitiveness through gains in production efficiency. And here you can think about data-driven decision-making, predictive maintenance, collaborative robots. But also these technologies can support social inclusion through the creation of jobs, especially in supporting activities, such as, for instance, IT solutions, and this is very important in the case of India, software design, or also the production of these advanced equipment which are required to build up the smart factory. And then these technologies can also render the industrial production more sustainable through better use of energy and materials. And here you can think about, for instance, the smart sensors and how they can improve the energy efficiency in production process, or 3D printing, and how they can improve the use of materials also in the production process. So we have seen what are these technologies, why they're important. Now, the next question is who is creating and who is using this particular set of technologies. And what we find in the report is that similar to past revolutions, the technologies breakthroughs related to ADP technologies are again dividing the world between leaders, followers, and laggards. Okay, so they are again creating this division at the world level. And what we find when we look at the global landscape in terms of creation, production, and use of these technologies is that there are 10 economies that we call the front runners, which explain most of the patenting and export activity in this field. And this is something you can see in this figure that I am presenting here. What we have here is the distribution of global patents and the distribution of global export of capital goods related to ADP technologies. And you can see that these 10 countries which we have at the top, the front runners, they explain 91% of the patent activity and almost 70% of the exporting activity. Okay, so you can see that this is a very concentrated landscape in which we have a group of countries which are leading clearly the race. And this is something we can also observe within countries. Now, when we look at countries, and this is coming from the surveys we have implemented in the field in 5 developing countries, Ghana, Vietnam, Thailand, Argentina, and Brazil, what we observe is that only a very small portion of manufacturing firms in these countries is actually adopting today the 4.0 technologies. Okay, you can see that even in the most advanced countries in terms of use of these technologies, which is Brazil, the firms using 4.0 technologies do not even reach 5% of the sample. And also what you can see in this figure is that most of the firms, they are using very old technologies. what we label in the report Generation 1 or Generation 2 technologies. So this means that in developing countries especially, there is a huge digital gap. And this digital gap actually hampers the possibility of lead firms to link backward domestically and push forward the process of adoption of this type of technology. Okay, so what we observe is a sort of islands of modernity coexisting in a sea of backwardness. And I think even though this is specifically for these 5 countries, we can find the same situation in most developing countries, and in particular in India. Now, we have seen that, okay, engagement is not that extended. Then the question is, what is needed to engage in these technologies? And what we find in the report is that beyond the well-known framework conditions which are needed, such as connectivity, digital infrastructure, and so on, 2 requirements that stand out are, first of all, previous experience with industrial production, and this is key. And second, having the appropriate skills in the workforce. And let me give you a bit more of details about this. When we look at countries, what we find in the report is that there is a positive relationship between the level of engagement of countries with ADP technologies and the level of industrial capabilities. Okay, and here what we have is the categorization of countries according to the level of engagement with ADP technologies. You can see that we have front runners at the top, and then laggards at the bottom, and then you have different categories with different degrees of engagement. And what we see for each of these categories is what is the average value of the UNIDO's competitive industrial performance index, which can be used as a proxy for industrial capability. And what we find is that there is this very clear sort of a stairway of industrial capabilities that countries need to climb in order to enter and upgrade roles in the 4th industrial revolution. Okay, so these really point to the importance of manufacturing and industrialization in this process. Now, when we look at workers, also we find that there are 3 what we call the skills of the future that are really important, and that firms are actually thinking that will increase their importance in the future because of these technologies. And these are, first of all, skills related to human-machine interaction, but also skills related to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, so analytical skills, where you can see that firms are expecting the higher increase in terms of their importance in the future. But also it is interesting to show that soft skills are also regarded as very important, and they're going to keep their importance in the future. Okay? So these are the 3 skills that countries really need to try to strengthen in order to move forward in this technology. Now, setting already what is the background in terms of these technologies, let's move to what is happening in India and how is India performing in this set of technologies. And what we find in the report is that India is already active in this technological field and has established industrial capabilities. So that means that India is at a good starting point. In fact, what we have seen is that India is the only lower middle income country which made it to the 2nd top category of our classification. And here you can see the countries we define as active engaging with ADP technologies. And you can see that India is the only middle income country which is in the category followers as producer, which is the 2nd category in terms of engagement. And why is this? Well, this is explained because India has a strong patenting and exporting activity, especially when compared to other emerging countries. And let me go back to this figure I showed before. And now let's see where is India standing. And you can see that India is standing in the 25th position in terms of patenting activity at the global level, and the 19th position in terms of exporting of capital goods associated with this technology. So in relative terms, this are very high positions. However, it's also important to highlight that there is a big gap between India and the front runners. And this technological gap, in fact, represents an opportunity for India to move forward. Closing the gap, India can move forward. Now, how can India actually close the gap and capitalize on these opportunities in order to do so? And in order to address this question, the IDR reviews the policy responses that countries have been taken and are taking today to cope with the 4th industrial revolution. And what we find is that these responses tend to be highly contextual, and they tend to depend on the extent of industrialization and the extent of technological capability that the country has. But still, we identify 3 areas for policy actions that need special attention, and this is where we need to focus. First of all, we have seen that ADP technologies, in order to be adapted, they require important efforts in developing framework conditions. Okay? So framework condition building is very important. And this in particular along 3 dimensions: regulations and digital infrastructure, institutional infrastructure, this is very important, how governments set their policies and their strategies for digital technologies. And the third one is the international collaboration and technology transfer, which is actually a result from this concentration of the global landscape. It's very important to try to collaborate with these key players that they are the front runners. Now, even if the framework conditions are in place, countries still need to foster the demand and adoption for this new technology. And in order to do so, they need to look into 3 specific actions. First of all is the access and affordability of ADP technologies. The second one is the awareness regarding the use and the benefits of these technologies. And the last one is the readiness of vulnerable actors. And here we are thinking specifically on SMEs. Okay, it's very important to strengthen SMEs so they can link upwards with the leading firms already using this technology. And finally, for firms to be able to adopt these ADP technologies, the required skills and research capabilities should be in place. And here we focus on human resources and the skills we have identified before, but also in research capabilities, which are very important so that countries can adapt this new technology to the local context. So, to summarize, what are the main takeaways we can take today coming from the IDR? First of all, as we have mentioned, Industry 4.0 technologies can become a key driver of inclusive and sustainable industrial development, but the diffusion is still very limited and highly concentrated in a few countries and firms. This is the evidence we have just shown. Secondly, building and strengthening industrial capabilities is a prerequisite for the productive absorption of this new technology. Now, this means that far from losing importance, industrialization remains a major avenue to embark in the ongoing industrial revolution. And now for the specific case of India, what we have seen is that India is already well positioned to exploit the opportunities opened by this technology. And what we can argue is that by leveraging on the capacities already in place and supporting an ecosystem that facilitates adoption, India can actually close the technology gap with the leading economies and foster this vision of a self-reliant India. So thank you very much for your attention, and for those of you who might be interested to know more about IDR, you can find the report and all supporting materials at unido.org/IDR2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alejandro. And I realize I've been very demanding to present so much of analytical work in just 10-15 minutes. And that does, of course, not do justice to all the underlying work, but we would like to focus just on the main findings. And I think you highlighted a few points which I would like to reiterate. This is mainly linked on this idea of having industrial capabilities. So there is, to one side, you might interpret it that there is no leapfrogging from 1 to 4. One has to go and learn to a certain extent. But the flip side of it is also that one doesn't have to learn at the same pace. One can also try to learn much faster. So if we capitalize much faster on the learnings, then we can still do that. And you also see that with this concept of islands of technological capability within India, there is already some capabilities, but just that each firm will have to kind of move on there. So that's fine. And I think that the other point, which is coming out there, and I take on my head as being a former researcher, is a bit on this co-creation of this advanced digital production technology. So that's one hand, it's the knowledge of manufacturing technologies and the knowledge of the physical technologies, plus the digital capabilities that brings the new technologies. And that is maybe something where countries like India but many developing countries are having to work to bring together the productive sector and the innovative sector, like what we see in the countries which have high industrial capabilities. capabilities like Japan and Germany, and others are much more advanced on that. I would like, because we are a little bit out of time, but there is a set of questions on the Q&A screen that have been coming forward, and I would like to take up one question and then maybe ask the three, Anup and Deepak and Alejandro, to maybe reflect on this, because in the question and answers there is some concerns, of course, about what is going to be the labor impact, and then saying that particularly the kind of the lower skilled blue collar workers might be at risk, or could be maybe the easiest replaced by cobots or by robots. So what are we going to do with a larger number of employments in this lower skilled categories? How can we engage them and present a way forward for them? So maybe can I ask Alejandro first, and then Anup and Deepak to maybe also make some comments on that?
Yes. I think that's a very relevant question, and something that we're also asking ourselves while we were producing the report. And what we try to do is also try to make an estimation of what will be the impact of these technologies in the creation of jobs, which is fundamental to achieve the inclusiveness part of ISID. And here, what we think it is very important is to try to capture all possible channels through which the new technologies can affect job creation. And in particular, what we have seen is that automation of manufacturing, when we look at the global level, does not necessarily lead to a destruction of jobs. In fact, there are some evidence that we present in the report, and I encourage you to look in chapter number 2. That when one takes all the possible effects into consideration, namely not only the direct effect of, let's say, automating a particular factory, particular industry in one country, but also the indirect effects coming from the linkages that this industry has both backwards and forward in the same country and at the global level. When we take all these elements into consideration, we find that at least in the last 15 years, automation has actually created jobs at the world level. And why so? Because in order for a country to, let's say, automate its manufacturing production, it requires higher levels of especially services and inputs coming from other sectors or other countries. And what we have seen is that actually the majority of the jobs created indirectly because of automation at the world level is coming from emerging economies, namely that emerging economies which are actually providing inputs and services to advanced economies which are today automating have been creating jobs, and a number of jobs that is actually more than compensating possible losses of jobs at the advanced economies which are automating. So I think the question is not yet solved. It's something that we need to explore further, investigate further. But what we try to highlight in the report that we need to take into account all effects. And especially in the case of India, this is very interesting because India has capabilities to provide IT solutions and software design, not only to Indian manufacturing firms, but also to other manufacturing firms around the world. So I think there's a huge opportunity for India to create more jobs through the 4th Industrial Revolution at the world level.
Yeah, so if I capture your argument, you're basically saying that there might be less jobs on the shop floor, but there's more jobs in the whole system. So there will be jobs created elsewhere, which will require, of course, different skills. So there will be a skills qualitative transformation more than quantitative. Anup, can you comment on this aspect of how jobs are affected?
Yeah, surely. Job profiles are going to get affected. And as I said, one of the biggest disruptors is going to be in terms of, giving employment to people who are problem solvers and value adders. So for instance, the loader and unloader, the coolie, which we used to even have on our railway platforms, now you don't see them because everybody uses a smart trolley which has wheels. Yeah, so that activity has vanished from the railway station. Similarly, the loading and unloading jobs will vanish from the shop floor. Certain inspection jobs will also vanish when you have machine vision and artificial intelligence. So the challenge is to create those alternate jobs, which Alessandro is referring to. And we need to create that in our own country. And that's why, I'm again pleading that we need to look at the major part of India where there is a lot of opportunity for people to value add, get not only their own employment, but also become an active creator of wealth. So that's one area where we need to look at very, very proactively, because within a plant, there can be a big, jerk. And I cannot name the company, but a friend of mine who is in a bakery business, who employs hundreds of people, he has sold out his stake to an overseas firm, and the overseas firm is setting up a new plant in which there are going to be 1/10 of the labor. So there is going to be this, cutting of traditional non-value added jobs, and I think that is part of destined to do much more creative and innovation kind of activity, and therefore the machines have to take over. After all, the machines were designed by humans to take over all the drudgery. So we have to, reconcile this, but be very proactive.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Anup, for that perspective. And I think you're right. It will be the non-value added jobs of loading, unloading, and so on, which will be most at risk in first instance. And they've disappeared in other sectors, and still there is employment created with services that have added value. That is a clear point. So Deepak from Invest India, as one of the co-organizers, what is your perspective or your experience on this aspect of jobs and Industry 4.0?
So Renee, first, let's all agree that the genie is out of the bottle. You can't get it back. So it's no longer a choice. 4.0 is an imperative. That's the first. We have to go ahead with it. Now, what is 4.0 may be different in different countries. And when I say that, I think it cannot be one solution fitting everybody. There will be different elements and there'll be different designs around it on how it takes shape in every system. As far as job loss is concerned, I think we've also put it into a timeline. Is it short term, medium term, long term? Long term, I think the jury is still out. Will we have more jobs? We might just have universal income, and maybe us are just sitting on the beach and enjoying ourselves and may not have to go to an office. Ideally, I wouldn't mind that in the long term. Short term, if some things have to happen, they definitely will be. And as so well put, there is definitely a clear profile changing of jobs. So on one level, we may see digitization democratizing opportunities far more. But on the other side, there is this divide, at least in the short run, which could get created to those which have a greater access to those skills. And it could leave a large part outside of it. So skill development, at least in the short and the medium term, is going to be much faster. And that is where it takes me back to what you will see, at least in the Indian context, of greater adoption of the cobots kind of thing, where they start working together in collaboration. And I think that is where our medium term might just extend a little longer than at some of the other places, which may be a little shorter number of people. Please don't forget, I'll be 1.5 billion by 2025-26. And 1 billion of those will be under the age of 35. My average age is 29. I'm going to be the youngest in the world all the way up to 2080. So I need people, and I need people who are going to be getting work to do. So please do keep that social dynamic very clearly in mind. And it's not just an efficiency dynamic which works out. So how that balances out, I think it will taking its own step forward, sideways, backwards as we trudge along, because I don't think there is any beaten path to it or there is any playbook. But in the long term, how it's going to impact jobs in numbers, I think the jury is still out. I will not be in a position to take a call on that one.
Thank you very much, Deepak. And I think what you're saying that each country and each firm probably has to find its own way to Industry 4.0. So maybe we have to find Industry 4.0 made in India kind of a approach. And that will indeed be maybe more around cobots and smaller solutions where part of the tasks are taken away rather than go for the whole gamut, so to speak, to completely go to computerization and robotization. So that is certainly an element there. But I guess that we need to seriously have a look at the skills profile and how we can bring then what Alejandro was also referring to, some of the kind of the more analytical and problem-solving skills, and that is probably skills which are more difficult to bring into a reskilling format. To bring this, it would be much more early age at the high schools, at universities, that we would pay more attention to creativity, problem solving, and so on, to basically educate the workforce for the future. I think with this, I mean, we've run out a bit of time, so I would like to thank Alejandro, Anup, and Deepak, and the other JSs had to leave already. So in their absence, I would still like to thank them for their contribution. I would like to hand over to or to maybe say that this is a work in progress. The jury is out. We need to find our ways, and we will probably go 2 steps sideways and then straight again and again. So in that area, UNIDO is very interested to try to avail its expertise, which is in part input in this industrial development report, but it's also the work that we do on the manufacturing excellence that was highlighted as the growth trajectory towards Industry 4.0. So with this, I would like to hand over to Maitre for a vote of thanks and wrapping up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rene. So with this, we have come to the end of today's webinar, which has proven to be really rich and insightful. We would like to thank our